Hello, we're Steve and Mary Alessi, pastors of Metro Life Church, and we're really delighted that you chose to join us today as part of our online campus. Now, at Metro, we are all about the 3 R's: relationship, relationship, relationship. What does that mean? It means we value relationship with God being first and foremost. Also, relationship with each other. People who walk through the doors of our church, we value those relationships. And then relationship with people outside of our church walls, which is why we believe this online campus is so important. It's allowing us to connect with you.
This is us getting to know you, and we're excited to do that. If you haven't had a chance yet, would you subscribe to our YouTube channel? Turn your notifications on so every time we go live or every time we post a video, you have quick access to it. And we hope that this message will be a blessing to you and it will encourage your walk with the Lord.
Now listen, I'm a huge fan of The Office. Any other Office fans in the room? There we go. If you've read either of my books, I apologize for the many Office references. It's just, unfortunately, when you're single for a long time, you date series. So getting married at 29 meant I had plenty of time to memorize almost every line of The Office. And if you think about it, basically the same cast was together for 9 years. 9 years is a long time to go to work with the same people. And as they were filming the final episode, there's a line that was totally scripted, but it spoke to both endings in the show. It spoke to the ending of the actual show, and it also spoke to the ending of this group of people working together. And Andy, who's kind of a goofball throughout the whole show, he all of a sudden has this insane level of clarity, and he says these words: I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. Anybody know the reference I'm making here? It's been heralded as one of the deepest, gut-wrenching truths on television. He looks at the camera, and with all the emotion, both as a man, knowing this job is coming to an end, and as a character, because the show has them all leaving, knowing that this is the end of a show. He says, I just wish we would have known what we had before it was over. You ever heard that phrase, you never know what you got till it's gone? Anybody experienced that before in life? How many of you look back to your past and see days you wish you could get back? You know, as a young parent, it's weird. Every day is both a celebration of the new and a mourning of the old. Miss the young baby. We love the kid who's now old enough to run into our arms, but we miss certain moments. You see, I think the reason that so many people like the quote that this man made in the show is because it speaks to the human condition. It's kind of like that phrase, you can't have nice things. Like, why can't we have nice things? Anyone ever felt like that? Like, man, there's always something going wrong. Like, I don't know, a room of people like this and a cell phone going off. Like, why can't we just have nice things? I'm just kidding, whoever you are. The Lord knows. And it just speaks to the human condition because of our flesh, unfortunately, it's really hard to know when we're in the good, especially if we feel the good is limited. But can I ask you, does that statement have to be true? Do we actually have to connect with the words that Andy Dwyer said? Because let me ask you a question. What if there actually was a way to know you're in the good old days? What if there actually was a way to enjoy the season you're in 100%? And looking forward to the season that's coming and being grateful for the seasons that have ended. Can I ask you a question? Why would the Christian ever have to leave the good old days? Why would we ever come into agreement with the idea that we would have to leave the good old days? You know, maybe we're referencing back when we were in college and our knees could do certain things they can't do anymore. I'm turning 34 in like 3 or 4 weeks, and it was crazy. I had a piece of chocolate cake at 10:30, didn't sleep that night. The good old days where I could get out of bed, play basketball all day, be totally fine. Those days are long gone. But what if those weren't the good old days? What if the good old days is any day I'm in? You see, I actually believe we should reject the touching moment of a comment like that. We should reject the idea that we have to leave the good old days. Because I believe the Lord has given his people a gift, and this gift causes us to enjoy every season of our life. Trial, success, loss, or gain. And that is gratefulness. I believe gratefulness. We could also say thankfulness. I think all of these things speak to a gift the Lord has actually given us. As Thanksgiving is approaching, it always makes sense that we would talk about it. And we've always kind of heard people say that, you know, when you first think of Thanksgiving, what are the first things you think of? Food, football, parades, big old naps, Black Friday, which now starts like earlier than Friday. Like, these are the things that come to our mind. Where am I going for vacation? Man, who's going to be there? But what if there was more to Thanksgiving than all of those things? And not something as simple as going around the table and talking about what we're thankful for. I'm talking about something deeper. Somebody at coffee recently asked me, when did you actually give your heart to the Lord? And I said, that's tough because I've been raised in church literally my entire life. As a pastor's son, I was born and my mom took me to worship rehearsal 2 days later. The first non-hospital and home I walked into was the church at 2 days old for choir rehearsal. This has been my whole life. At 13, I actually was like, I give my heart to the Lord. At 18, I felt a real call to ministry. All of a sudden, 3 years into pastoring, at 23, I'm like, God, I think this is real. At what point did I actually give my heart to the Lord? And I've been using this analogy because I think the analogy speaks to truth itself. It's kind of like the ocean. How many of you would go to the beach, put your feet in the water, and then tell somebody you went into the ocean that day? But you did technically go into the ocean. But if you wade out a little bit deeper to where the water starts to come to around about here, maybe now you're like in the ocean. But some of you would say, if your feet can touch the bottom, you're not in the ocean. So I remember feeling like at 13, I put my feet in the water. At 18, the water was coming up to my midsection. At around 22, 23, I started to feel like the water was coming up above my nose. And now in my 30s, I'm like, I haven't come up for air, and it's great. Breathing is overrated. I want to drown in my relationship with God. You see, that analogy I'd like to use when it comes to the idea of gratitude, because about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, I preached a message on the Dayenu. Does anybody remember that message? It was a Hebrew song and practice that they would have used to rehearse all of the things the Lord had already done. And it went something like this. I'm going to read it really fast, but if he would have taken us out of Egypt and not made judgments on the Egyptians, it would have been enough. If he would have made judgments on them, but not on their gods, it would have been enough. If he would have destroyed their idols and not given us their wealth, it would have been enough. And so on. If he would have not split the sea for us, it would have been enough. If he wouldn't have drowned our enemies, it would have been enough. And they just walked through their history, these big moments, and said, Lord, if that was all you did, it would have been enough. And it was a beautiful practice of gratefulness. It's defined as connecting the gift back to the giver. Taking a moment to look at all of the things the Lord has given and to remind ourselves of where those things came from. Today, in the next 21 minutes, add 17 or 18, kidding. I would like to wade a little bit deeper into this idea of the Dayenu, a little bit deeper into the idea of gratefulness, into thankfulness. And I believe it'll speak to the Thanksgiving that we're about to walk into. C.S. Lewis wrote a phenomenal book years ago called The Great Divorce, and I would encourage everyone to read it. It's super quick, 120 pages. It might be one of the most enjoyable audiobooks. I wouldn't know. I read with paper, but it's kind of a Narnia-like story. And in the introduction, as he's trying to speak to the point of his book, which he ends by saying, I am not in any way predicting what's actually going to come when we die. Because apparently the whole book is written from the perspective of people that have all passed. He is not trying to speak to what he actually theologically believes takes place. But he does write a beautiful story that helps walk people through some very real Christian realities. And in the middle of that, in his introduction, how many of you, when you read a book, skip the introduction, skip the foreword, read chapter 1? Yeah, that is a sin to us authors. You hurt our heart. You put good work into that introduction. He says this in the introduction. I'm putting it on the screen for you. He says, I think earth, if chosen instead of heaven, will turn out to have been all along only a region in hell. And earth, if put second to heaven, to have been from the beginning a part of heaven itself. He's speaking of two different types of people that are sharing the same common space of earth. And he says, for those that choose heaven, not at the end, for those that choose the things of heaven, they'll realize there was never a day they weren't in heaven. But for those not in the next life, now, that choose hell, for them, they're always in hell. Today, I would like to wade really deep into those waters because I believe it speaks to the three really big aspects of our life. I think that truth speaks to our past, our future, and our present, and in that order. Does that make sense? Let me ask you a question. What do you look back and see when you look at your past? Let's start talking about your past. What do you see? When you look at your yesterday, is it something you're trying to escape from? Something you're trying to ignore? Something trying to pull you back in? Something you're trying to keep quiet? Something you're embarrassed of? Or hey, is it something you wish you could return to? The good old days, the days before things got hard. I know we've said many an encouraging thing from pulpits like these when we've said, your past is gone. There's nothing you can do about it. It's over. Move on. I myself was at coffee with somebody counseling them and told them, your future deserves your attention much more than your past. And I believe that. But again, for the context of this message, we're wading a little bit deeper, right? We're going a little bit deeper. What if I told you your past is not dead? It's not. And there's actually a lot you can do about your past. Let me clarify for everyone who's terrified in the room. Your sin is dead. But your past is not. We've tried to make the two synonymous. That our past means my sin. I loved being a youth and young adult pastor because a 21-year-old would come in and go, man, my past. Like, dude, you haven't lived long enough to have a past. I can talk about my past and hear adults go, what are you talking about? You're 33. Right? But your past is not dead. Your sin is gone. And it's not because it's over. It's because Christ died for it. How minimizing of God's work would it be to say, my past is gone because it's in the past? When in reality, my past is gone, my sin is gone because Christ took it on the cross and died for it. So the reality is your past is alive and well. And it actually should be the most encouraging truth you hear all day. Your past is not dead because you're not dead. Your past is alive and well, just like you are. Isn't it interesting when you look at the story of David trying to convince Saul to let him go fight Goliath? The reality is that it doesn't matter how tall Goliath was. You have people like Malcolm Gladwell trying to say that, yeah, he was tall, but the guy was cross-eyed. You have some people try to say he was really only about 6'11", 7 feet, but back then everybody was 5 foot. You have some that say, no, he was 10, 11, 12 feet tall. It doesn't matter. You want to know why it doesn't matter? Because David was a teenager. He was a kid. And he walks into a king. This king and every one of his army have been terrified of fighting Goliath. For 40 days, they have it's the definition of a stalemate. They're terrified. And in walks a teenager with a slingshot saying, I'll get him. Now listen, if I was Saul, I would speak to the present. I would immediately speak to the thing I'm seeing directly in front of me. The age disparity, and I would say, hey, he's a lot taller than you. I'd say like, hey, right here, right now, that guy's bigger than you. No. But isn't it interesting that Saul doesn't address their size? Saul says, you can't go fight him. He's been a warrior from his youth, and you're still a youth. So he says, hey, this guy's experience, his past, everything that led to the moment where Goliath was able to stand out and scare the armies of God is way too much for your experience because you don't have any, you're still a kid. You see, I would speak to the present. He's going to squish you. Saul speaks to their past. He's been a warrior from his youth, and you're still a youth. And look at what David says. Put it back on the screen. David responds with, oh, no. You see, I have kept my father's sheep. Now, I got to be honest. If you're trying to convince a king to let you fight a giant, I'm not sure bringing up sheep is going to really be all that convincing of an argument. But if you really read through what David is saying, Saul says, you don't have enough experience, and David says, oh, yes, I do. He says, there were many times when I was watching the sheep that a lion would show up, and I want you to be very attentive to the language. Your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, go to the next verse, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. Now we're going to pause there. Where is the reference to God? Okay, none. Great, let's move on. And if he arose against me, not a reference to God, I caught him, not a reference to God, and struck him and killed him. Any reference to God so far? Keep going. Your servant, no reference to God, has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. Pause. Any reference to God so far? No. Outside of what Goliath is defying, no reference to God. Now look at the next verse, 37. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. You see, this is interesting because I feel like I would have said that in reverse order. I'd be like, no, God's on me, right? But David's like, no, man, when that lion came at my sheep, I ran after it. And when it rose against me, I went after it, right? And then at the end of the whole thing, he goes, it was the Lord who delivered me. And at first that might seem like a young kid's arrogance, but in reality, this is actually how you and I experience battles. When a battle raises up in your life, like a kid who wants to leave, like a sickness diagnosis that you didn't see coming, like a spouse that wants to leave, like not having enough money, like losing your job, you really don't feel like God's involved immediately. In fact, most of the time, we start saying, God, where are you? One of the biggest things that baffles me is that people who don't believe in God point to the evil in the world as a sign that God doesn't exist, as if the best thing I can do to fix the evil in the world is remove God. If there is evil in the world, then I want God here. But that's what the human condition does. When we go through a battle, we all start asking, where's God? As if God's existence is to keep us from battles. And I got to be honest, in the battles in my life, I don't always feel like I have this Samson-like ability to fight with everything I'm going through. I don't feel like God's there to help me raise up and chase a lion. I don't feel like God's always there to have me grab that lion's beard and slay that thing. I don't always feel like God's involved. But when it's all over and I'm still standing, I go, shoot, that wasn't me. When the lion or the bear was on top of him, he's like, Lord, I got to do it. But when he's able to stand over that lion or that bear, he's pretty sure, like, that wasn't me, dude. That was God. And therein lies gratefulness. I'm still standing, and I shouldn't be. Do you know what? If the minute I said your past is not dead, if that put a frog in your throat, it actually should excite the living daylights out of you. Because you are standing over your lion and your bear. Maybe it took a gash out of you. Maybe you're still patching up your wounds. But it didn't kill you. You're still here. So your past is not dead. The question is, which side of the battle lines does your past bring you to? Because what's interesting is David responds to Saul saying, I'm a warrior too, right? So now here's what we know. Goliath is a warrior. David's a warrior. They've both fought. Can I be honest? I think I'd rather fight a person than a lion or a bear, if I'm going to be honest with you. If you showed me to the zoo, fight the lion, the bear, or the zookeeper, I know which one I'm picking. Anyone else? So, if anything, he has a more impressive resume. So Saul goes, you don't have enough experience. David says, I actually do. And here's what's interesting. He calls him an uncircumcised Philistine, which means he has not done the things to pick God. Every day he lives is a sign he defies God. And then he says, and best guess what? He's defying the armies of the living God. So get this, they both have similar experience. They're both warriors. They've both been successful. They're both kind of afraid, like they put fear in the eyes of their people. I kind of feel like David was just stacking the lives of lions and bears. If you go look at it, it says multiple. When lions and when bears. I made this comment in the first service, and I want to make sure I make it again. It's like Ace Ventura going, wow, this is a lovely room of death. I mean, he was killing lion after lion, bear after bear, and stacking them. Successful. Still alive. And all of that battle made him show up to defend God. When Goliath, all his success and all his fight and all his battles caused him to show up to defy God. Which takes us back to the quote C.S. Lewis made. When you choose earth, you kind of find out you were in hell all along because you didn't choose God. But when you choose heaven and you put all of your needs beneath heaven's needs, you find out you show up to the battle lines in a realm of heaven. There's no realm on earth where a rock should kill a giant. But that's because they weren't fighting on earth. When David showed up to the battle, he brought a realm of heaven with him. When Goliath showed up, he brought a realm of hell with him. And while our picture of hell is dark and demonic, and our picture of heaven is bright and fluffy, can I ask you a question? Have you ever heard that statement, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? You ever heard that? Heaven lives that reality. Can't fail. And hell lives in the exact opposite. Hell cannot win. The book of Revelation does not depict the end times. It tells you the end of everything. Sounds different or sounds the same, but it's not. It's actually very different things. It's not talking to us about the day that we will walk outside and the earth will explode. It's talking to us about the end of a battle, and God's already won that battle. Heaven cannot fail. Hell cannot win. So when heaven shows up against hell, all it needs is a teenager, a slingshot, and a rock. And you're going to try to tell me you're not big enough to fight your battles? You're not big enough to fight your battles when a giant can fall to a teenager with a slingshot? You see, your past, when you look back on your past through gratefulness and you connect the gift of every single challenge to the giver, the God who kept you alive through it all, you are literally creating heaven on earth because you've chosen God. And now, it starts to rewire your whole challenge. Now, I'm going to speak to this in a second. I would like to quickly speak to your future, because I would like for you to think about where your feet currently are, not in your past and not in your future. Your feet are currently planted in the present, right? So let me ask you, if we already know that I can look past into my past, and whatever tried to kill me didn't, whatever lion, whatever bear tried to kill me, it didn't, right? And tomorrow, sorry, messed that up, and today is tomorrow's past, right? Then the logic stands to reason that tomorrow you'll look back on today and be grateful for it. Because you won't lose. You haven't lost. God delivered you, and you made it through. And you may be thinking, what about the battles that actually do end someone's life? What about the battles that do end the marriage? Well, I hope I'm not callous in saying this. We weren't meant for earth anyways. I'm not a citizen of this world. What about the people that don't have this or don't have that? If they choose God, they're going to have heaven. I'm pretty sure they're not going to look back on their time on earth and go, but that wasn't fair. Guys, we don't live for this world. We live for that one. And I don't want to wait. I don't want to have, the only way I can make sense of to live as Christ and to die as gain is to realize I don't have to wait for death for heaven. I can bring it with me like David brought it onto that battlefield. And I do that when I remind myself through gratefulness of every time I was laying underneath a lion and my fight or flight was going crazy and I was doing everything I can just to survive, and yet somehow here I am. Can I be honest? Every time anybody approaches a member of our team and says, you did so good up there, you're going to always get the same response. Praise God, he did it again. Because there's not one aspect of the ministry from this platform that we ever feel is a result of us. And in the same way, you did not beat your battle on your own. You did not defeat whatever it is that tried to take you out on your own. And through gratefulness, I just want you to think about this. What in the world would you do today if you knew your future is going to look back on today and find the gift in today? Let me look at this. Philippians chapter 4. Paul is saying something that doesn't seem to make sense to me, if I'm being honest with you, because he says a few things, then he says this last thing, and I don't see how they always connect. But he says, not that I'm speaking of being in need. This is right after he is telling the people in Philippians, hey, come on, keep giving, the ministry needs it. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low. I know how to abound in any and every circumstance. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. Pause. Have you guys noticed how often when we hear that, we focus on the word content? I have learned to be content. We probably need to focus on the word learned. How many of you think you're done learning? Anybody in the room think they no longer have to learn? Paul is saying, wow, I was brought low and I learned how to be content there. I was brought high and I learned how to be content there. In any circumstance I've ever experienced, whether I was facing plenty or hunger, abundance or need, this guy got shipwrecked. This guy was basically killed and then dragged out of the city and popped back up and went right back in. This is the guy who's like, I've been through it all. And I learned. You see, here's the thing. The lion and the bear is about teaching. I know this sounds crazy, but everything you have gone through up to this point and the things you will go through next is about teaching. I believe in the power of salvation, that once it takes place, it's eternal, it's amazing, God does all the work. I also believe in the power of discipleship, which means when you start being a Christian, you better start learning how. And you better put it into practice, and your life better look different, and you should be a different person because according to Scripture, you died. Which means when I walk into a challenge, the Lord is not a puppet master manipulating things so I can learn, but he is saying, wow, that big wave is coming. It's going to knock you on your butt. If it just knocks you on your butt, there was no purpose and the world's a terrible place. But if I can redeem it and teach you something, you can look back on it and say, wow, the Lord is good. So guess what he says? After saying, I learned all this, verse 13, what did I learn? I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. This is the equivalent of David saying, I took out a lion, I took out a bear, bring on the giant. This is Paul's equivalent. I've been in need, I've had plenty, I can do it all through God who gives me strength. This is future gratefulness. You see, this is the weird thing. Gratefulness is not just looking into the past and being thankful. It's also projecting through a gift of prophecy, not some spiritual prophecy, through the prophecy of actually encouraging yourself in the Lord. I can look, even through my battle, I can look to tomorrow and say, I'm going to win this thing. Let me tell you a story that is not funny, although it's going to sound humorous. We tried to sleep train Marino recently. It was brutal. I spent 95 minutes in my son's room trying to put him to sleep. But I told myself, I'm preaching in 12 days. And if I stick with this, I'll wake up in a different world in 12 days. If I train my son, that when I take that pulpit, I'll be a different person living in a different room. And guess what? The kid doesn't want to come near us at night anymore. I've slept so good. And that's how you need to approach your battle. If I stick with this, in 1 year, I'll be a different person. If I stick with this, in 8 months, I'm going to wake up in a whole different world. And if I stick with this lion, if I stick with this bear, I'll start picking fights with giants. Did you notice something about David? David wasn't enlisted in the army. He picked Goliath. Goliath didn't pick him. You know, when you get a diagnosis, what if you change the way you see it? Hell didn't pick cancer for you. You picked cancer for heaven. Because I'm going to walk in and go, hey, you messed with the wrong dude. You're about to hear a testimony of a couple that could have settled for a just okay house. They could have. They could have settled for a lion and a bear house, but the reality is they had gone through too many lions and bears, so they wanted a giant house. And they literally got one. And if you're wondering, that sounds materialistic, okay? The reality is that they opened that house for the people of this church multiple times a week. I have to ask them constantly, do you sleep? And every single time people come over that house, they are reminded, oh my gosh, I can slay giants. If I stick with the lion, if I stick with the bear, if I project through gratefulness a future where I will look back on this present and be grateful for the gift of the lesson that God taught me through this challenge, then you know what? I'll start picking fights with giants. Oh my God, I'm so sorry you lost your job. Are you kidding me? I honestly can't wait to see what God does. Oh, they didn't accept our offer. I'm actually kind of glad, because what's the Lord going to do next? You see, gratefulness is not just looking into your past. The Dayenu is not just looking into your past and saying, man, God, that was enough. The whole point of the practice is knowing it's enough for me, but it's not enough for God. Which is how we live out that C.S. Lewis quote, I'm choosing heaven over earth. When I show up and I say, Lord, it's enough for me, I'm saying I don't need any more. But Lord, I know you do. Lord, I know you have more. Can I tell you, your battle has less to do with you and more to do with the fact that this world needs disciples of Jesus who have learned a thing or two, who could look at people going through battles and they feel like their battle's a giant, and they're like, oh, no, actually, that giant's not that big. That giant's about this big. Because I've been there before. Do you know the comfort it is to hear somebody go, the thing that feels like 1,000 pounds to you, about 10, and you're going to be fine? How would you live your life in the present if you realized, through gratefulness, whatever's happening to me now, I'm learning. What am I learning? I don't know. But I know when the giant comes, I'll pick the giant. He ain't picking me. Because I can do all things through Christ. Let me just tell you. I don't know if the battle to lessons are 1-for-1. I don't know if every battle has a specific lesson. I also know sometimes the storm is because we drove into it and didn't have to. But I do know this. God's redeeming power works for both the storms we saw coming and the ones we didn't. The lion that was in our sights and the lion that came at our back. You may be feeling like you're going through this battle alone, but tomorrow you will wake up and see the God in it, I promise you. I have never walked through a battle ever, and I'm being literal, ever, without somebody asking me within the month how to get through their battle. And I'm like, the Lord literally just delivered me from the same thing. I was super overwhelmed by ABC. The Lord helped me overcome it. And now I'm sitting here talking to somebody who's like, I'm super overwhelmed by ABC. I'm like, dude, I got the answers for you. You have to go from thinking your life's about the lions and the bears and realize your life's about the giants. And not in some, you can do it, you can win way. Because the most amazing thing David did when the whole battle was over was he cut the giant's head off, lifted it up to show the armies of God, look what our God did. And the same army that was terrified for 40 days, all of a sudden got all their confidence back. You see, your giant is not about making you a giant killer. It's about giving the army their confidence back. It's not about, oh, David has killed his thousands and 10,000s. It's about the army of God realizing it's time to show up and go to battle. That's what gratefulness does. I look back over every lion and bear and say, thank you, Lord. And then I prophesy over the giant, I'll be standing with your head, reawakening the armies of the living God. I pray that this message blessed you, because here's the deal. You don't have to take my word for it. We're going to show you right here, right now, an example from this house of people that beat the lion, beat the bear, beat the giant, and reawakened the army.
Before you check out and click off this video, listen, thank you for letting us speak into your life. Hopefully, the message you heard has inspired and encouraged you. Now, if you want to find out more about Metro Life, you can go to our website at metrolifechurch.com. And right there, you'll see more and more about what this ministry offers you. It's great to have you joining us online, but we want you to step into our world if you feel so compelled to do so. And if you would like to make a donation through an offering, you can do so, because right on your screen, there's a little tab for giving. Click on that tab. I promise you, you'll be blessed as you do give.
So thank you for watching with us. Thank you for joining our online campus family. We hope you have a great week, and we hope that if you're in the Miami area, that you would come and personally visit us so that we can shake your hand and get to know you. Have a great week.